like if we had the ability, I don't even know that it's constitutional because it goes around and goes around. What we need, I don't even know that it's constitutional because it goes around and goes around. What we
Governor Braun was providing leadership when he did a lot of those executive orders. I could make the argument as a member of the General Assembly that policy making is our responsibility. Again, he's providing some leadership there. We have done some things in the space of regulation, trying to make sure that our regulations in Indiana are reasonable. We're not the regulating body, of course. We can't do that. We don't have the ability or the expertise to do that. Now, I would push back, though, Stan, on one thing that you said, is, or at least that you seem to not appreciate, but the idea of making sure that we know what the economic cost is of our regulations is a very relevant thing for us to know. If you take a look, I mean, states can strangle themselves, their people, and their economy and their businesses by having overly burdensome regulations. We pride ourselves in Indiana of having regulations, but making sure that they are reasonable. We try and make sure the agencies are helpful and not play gotcha most of the time. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But what you're talking about there is a very, very complex thing. Obviously, IDEM, there's a lot of expertise there, so they need to be able to make those rules. But it's also fair for us to ask the question, all right, what's going to be the economic impact of that rule? Doesn't mean you don't do it. We ought to, though, be able to understand it before it's imposed.
To the levels that those economic analysis can in fact be done. Right now, we are not funding our environmental regulations and regulatory bodies with and giving them the personnel and resources to do that. So it's going to stifle our ability to protect our.
Well, I appreciate that from you. Yeah, I'll continue to.
I'm going to get back on track here real quick. Terry, you've got a question. I'm getting ready to lead into you, Ray. We're coming. That is not. Okay. Wade, you can come on up. And then I will ask you the next question. Wade Cap.
Hi, Senator. Wade Cat. I'm a lifelong Monrovia resident. I've lived here since I was born. I'm a third-year MD PhD student. I'm a little tired right now because I started my surgery rotation at IU West, and I've been there since 5 a.m. this morning. But I guess my first question I just want to throw to you really quickly is very simple. Do you think that cutting Medicaid saves money?
So let me tell you a little bit about Medicaid. It depends on the circumstance, obviously, but Medicaid, since it began, I don't know exactly when Medicaid began, in the 1960s, I believe.
65.
Yeah, and so from 1965 to 2021, Medicaid, as Indiana's share of Medicaid grew from $0 to $5 billion. From 2021 to 2025, Medicaid grew from $5 billion to $10 billion. So it doubled in the last 4 years. So we need to make sure that the right people are on Medicaid, so we preserve that for the people who do desperately need it.
So parsing out a little bit of what you said there, I think people sometimes get confused when we hear them talk about Medicaid as one thing. Indiana has
It's very complicated, lots of
about 10 different
pieces.
programs, right?
Yeah.
So what part of Medicaid is driving that cost that you're talking about?
All of them have risen dramatically.
And
one piece of it, I guess one piece is that the HIP program has certainly been a huge, dramatic increase. We did make some changes to that in our Senate Bill number 2 this year. And so for all of you, make sure you understand the HIP program. Let me step back a little further. Medicaid, generally speaking, is for young children, elderly, and the people who are infirm and unhealthy. That forever has been part of, that's what Medicaid was all about. Though back, I guess it was Obamacare, maybe about 2012, there was a change and a new level of Medicaid came into place that would ensure healthy
Might be a
adults
little bit, but
who
we're okay
could
right now.
otherwise
Thank you, though.
work and do other things. And that's the HIP program that Indiana has, and we've put together a plan that Indiana generally has been pretty proud of, to allow people to use that HIP program. The federal government pays about 90% of that. Indiana pays about 10% of that. Most of Medicaid, the federal government pays 2/3. We pay 1/3. And that program, along with a lot of others, though, has grown exponentially. But the problem with the HIP program is, because it's healthy adults, it's means tested. You can only be in that program if you make so much money.
So little money.
And we have found Indiana, unfortunately, especially after COVID, because everybody who wanted to be in the HIP program was allowed to be in the HIP program during COVID. And Indiana is one of the worst states as far as getting people back out of the HIP program who make more than they should. So this Senate Bill number 2 was that we passed this year, this legislature passed in April of this year, is meant to make sure that those people that earn more than they should to be on the HIP program are not on the HIP program, and they can go to some other different program, find insurance on their own, whatever the case may be. But because because it has doubled from 5 to 10 billion in just 4 years, we have to be fiscally responsible about it. The other thing I'll say with regard to that, just to kind of show the growth of the Medicaid program, is that in our 23 budget, well, I'll go back a little further. In our 21 budget, let me see if I'm going to make sure I get these numbers correct. Medicaid was about 12% of the state's budget in 21. In 23, it went from 12% of the state's budget to about 16% of the state's budget. So it grew almost 4%. And because public education is half of our state budget, public education dropped by that same dollar amount. They were directly related. This year, in the 25 budget, it went from 16% of our state's budget to about 21% of our state's budget. So we are hemorrhaging money very, very quickly on the Medicaid program. We will continue to have the Medicaid program, but we must save our funds for other things, other responsibilities that the state had, and we also need to protect the Medicaid program so it helps the people that really, really need it.
So you covered a lot of ground, but I do just want to touch back on some things that you said. And just for the record, I, as my PhD, I'm doing it in sociology, and I'm working in Bloomington on for my thesis on a project that's been evaluating Medicaid, what's known as the Medicaid unwinding. For the last 2 years, we've been studying the effects of the Medicaid unwinding in the state of Indiana. And the unwinding refers to the expansion that he referenced after COVID, when some of those expansions began to unwind, what the effects of that unwinding are on patients in the state of Indiana. And before I get to that part, I do just want to say that HIP 2.0 began in 2014. And it is matched right now 90-10. It's going to change after the decision that was made today.
Absolutely.
But how those 10% of funds that Indiana is making up, where is that coming from?
General fund of our budget.
Taxpayers.
So that's not true.
Well, actually, it's much more complicated.
It's coming from a tax
tax
on hospitals primarily. So that's about 7% of what Indiana's paying is actually hospitals paying. And 3% is coming from a tax on cigarettes. So we're taxing cigarettes. The hospitals are paying up the difference. But somehow this program that's covering healthcare for working age adults in the state of Indiana is costing the state too much money.
Yes.
So just to put a little bit of perspective on this as well, when hospitals treat people who are uninsured in this country, they're required to provide life or death care through something called EMTALA, which is the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. Hospitals don't eat that cost because they get people enrolled in Medicaid, in HIP. If we prevent them from being able to do that, the hospitals are going to start eating that cost. Okay, that's being paid for by HIP, 90% from federal, 7% from the hospitals themselves, 3% from a cigarette tax. We prevent them from doing that. Now the hospital's paying all of that emergency care. Who's paying for that emergency care now? It's everyone else paying into the system. It's costs going up for the rest of us who are paying into the system. From the hospital CEOs are not going to put that money out there out of their pay. It's going to come from the costs rising on everybody else.
So, but one quick statistic that's really relevant in this conversation. Indiana right now does allow hospitals, especially if someone comes into the emergency room, they're not on Medicaid, the hospital can give them an analysis, ask to give them a questionnaire, and see if they qualify for Medicaid. And they do that. The statistics that I see show hospitals get that wrong 70% of the time. They just put people on Medicaid, even though they don't financially qualify for it. So part of Senate Bill 2 is to make sure the hospitals get that right more of the time. I understand, especially given sometimes the circumstances of somebody coming into an emergency room, how you're not going to get that right. But getting it wrong 70% of the time is untenable and intolerable.
I would love to see the source
and
for
so
this statistic.
we just need to make sure, again, like I said before, that the right people are on that program, because it is a good program. It has a lot of value, but we have to make sure the right people are on it.
And I do want to talk about the
Don't we
eligibility
want that as
requirements,
well?
because that's a big part of the research that I'm doing, is talking to people who, I mean, the study that we've recently done, we interviewed 140 people across the state of Indiana. These are HIP Medicaid recipients who met the eligibility requirements and were kicked off of Medicaid for a variety of different reasons. One guy that comes to mind, he was a homeless gentleman in northwest Indiana, met the eligibility requirements for Medicaid, lost the Medicaid. We still don't know why. We think it probably has something to do with the letters being sent to an address that he was no longer at. So that's part of the reason people get kicked off of Medicaid. And he had COPD, and he was managing his COPD with an albuterol inhaler that cost about $40 per month. And he was paying into a power account, so $1 a month to this man. So $12 a year he's paying into his power account to meet the eligibility requirements for Medicaid HIP. And when he got kicked off of Medicaid for a clerical reason that was inappropriate, he did not get primary care. He did not have access to his albuterol inhaler, and for 6 months, while this man was trying to figure out how to get his coverage back, he called the ER. He called 911 6 different times to go to the emergency room, nebulizer treatments, and get his treatment through the emergency services. Now, I ask everybody here, and I would like to hear your response. Do you think an inhaler is
$40
cheaper
a month.
than an ambulance ride?
So no, the
Yes.
situation that you posit is awful. You should be on Medicaid.
It's the majority of people we talk to.
Okay.
So this scenario, this idea that there are just these people couch surfing on their parents' basement or whatever, who are just raking in the Medicaid payments. They're not paid to be on Medicaid. What's actually going on is it's people who meet the eligibility requirements, who, for a variety of bureaucratic reasons, and every single one of these hoops we throw them through, where they have to prove to the state that they meet the eligibility requirements. This is what we found out when we waived that process for 4 years. We didn't see situations like what I just described, and we actually saved money because these people were not going to the emergency room. They were getting primary care through a primary care doctor. It's cheaper to give people that than to kick them off and send them to the emergency room. And I can tell you from emergency doctors' perspectives, they are terrified about what just happened today. Because that means the already too busy emergency rooms where you guys go, and I'm sure everyone here has seen it.
And regular doctors. We're all losing our regular doctors too.
Yeah. Well, that problem's going to get a whole lot worse.
Yes, it will.
And I keep hearing stories about the guy that's just riding his parents' couch, breaking in the Medicaid somehow.
You're not hearing that from me.
Yeah, we
Medicaid
are.
doesn't pay people.
It does not. No, it doesn't. And
I don't know where that comes from.
it
I've not
keeps
heard that.
people
Comes from
healthy in a
Republicans.
extremely efficient fashion. And So I guess I would ask again, do you think that cutting people off of Medicaid saves money?
I think that Medicaid is an important program. I think we need to make sure that the people on it qualify for it. Otherwise, they shouldn't be on it because we have to save it.
Politicians get their health care paid
We have to save
for,
the remainder of our revenue
but
for
homeless
other
people
really
cannot.
important obligations at the state house. That's my answer.
I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Are there enough people to guarantee that when you cut people off Medicaid that you checked to make sure that they are not qualified? I mean, that seems like we're cutting government personnel and office workers, and it's just harder and harder.
That's the federal side, not the state. I mean,
So
they have some of
who's
that,
responsible
but don't. I cannot get up here and pretend that no, we're never going to make a mistake. The state of Indiana, government workers, like every other worker across the country, is capable of making a mistake. The situation that you just painted for us is a mistake. He should not have been kicked off Medicaid. If he's homeless, doesn't have any income, he's a Medicaid recipient. He absolutely qualifies, and we paid a lot more money because the mistake that he was kicked off Medicaid. That shouldn't happen. We don't want it to happen. Does it happen once in a while? Yeah, I'm afraid so.
It happens more often.
I also just want to point out, and it might be a problem that I led with that story of the homeless man on Medicaid, because the majority of people on Medicaid are actually not homeless, then they're actually working. They're working,
Yeah,
they're the people greeting you at the door of Walmart, and the Uber driver that, is taking you from the airport to wherever you're going. And it's people who are falling through the cracks I'm never hearing any kind of legislative ideas that would force Walmart to provide these people with health care, because currently that's not happening.
No, they underpay them so that they can get on programs like this, so that the wealthy stay wealthy because the wealthy aren't being taxed, right?
So I guess not to belabor all this, because obviously this is difficult stuff. This is complicated, and there are no easy answers to all of this. But for a similar perspective, I'm a public health pediatrician, so I work almost exclusively with Medicaid and uninsured kids. And so I see, I've got several great examples of kids who could not, for whatever reason, were eligible or couldn't get insurance or fell off insurance, because there are terrible things like that happen all the time, more than we'd ever like it to. But yeah, it is. It's scary how much the bills rack up when the kid instead ends up in a hospital. I mean, we're racking up thousands and thousands of dollars. So what is Indiana? I mean, is there anything in the works? So what is Indiana going to do to support, like a public health clinic like mine or hospitals? How are we going to pay for to stay open? I mean, even if we can't control what's happening on a federal level here at the state, what are we going to do to buffer ourselves so that we don't lose our central health systems?
So a couple of things. First of all, we've been trying hard since 2019 to get healthcare costs down in the state of Indiana. They're not all high, but Indiana is a very low-cost state. We're about 8% lower in cost of living than the national average. Our houses are 23% lower than the national average. We're a low-cost state. I don't think anybody here is probably going to disagree with me on that. Our healthcare costs are expensive, about 7th highest in the nation. There's really no justification for that. The answer as to why that is really, really complicated, I'm afraid. There's not just one answer. There are myriad answers to that question. But so we've been trying to do that by a couple of different things, and we could talk for 2 hours on this, the things that we've worked on. But trying to make sure that there's transparency in costs, for example, in hospitals. In particular, our 5 largest nonprofit hospitals, their prices are too high. I'm just going to be very, very candid about that. Oh yeah, they can't. Yeah, IU Health has $9 billion of reserves. They have 3 times more reserves than the state of Indiana has. They can keep their doors open. I can promise you. I can promise you. So they're going to keep their doors open. But so that's one, is trying to put downward pressure on the cost of healthcare is one piece. Medicaid expansion that we've been seeing happen is another really important piece of it. It's a challenge, and we have some disagreement on that. But the other thing is like public health dollars, and you guys have probably found some of here, but I'll talk a little bit about that. In 2023, Senate Bill number 3 was kind of reworking the public health in the state of Indiana. Prior to that, we spent about $9 million as a state on our public health offices, or county public health offices. And they were just kind of left to do whatever it is they wanted to do. There was really no collaboration, very little guidance. But we wanted to change that. We thought it was important to change that. And so in 2023, Senate Bill number 3, which means it was a big priority of ours, we added money to that to the tune of $225 million over our 2-year biennium budget. And that was really important. So like, about basically $100 million a year, because there was $25 million was for administrative startup costs and things like that. So that really put us on a track to invest more in our public health, to make sure that that Hoosiers were healthier, because we're not very healthy. In fact, we're one of the least healthy in the nation, frankly. But that was a priority, and that was going to fix that, and a lot of collaboration. I have seen tons of energy now coming from those public health departments since then. Now, turnaround in the 25 budget that we just passed was much more problematic. I don't know if you guys paid much attention or not. You probably were living your own lives, but we pass a budget based on the amount of revenue we expect to get in the next 2 years. And we do that. We do a revenue forecast. We don't do it. Experts do it. A revenue forecast in December. We start our budget process that way. In mid-April, just before we finish our session, they do another forecast so we can look at that revenue forecast and true up our budget based on that. The challenge that happened this year, because we had another $100 million each year in our public health spending, so $200 million basically ready to go. But when that April forecast came out, it was $2.4 billion less than it was in December. There's a lot of reasons to that too, but that was right in the cusp of a lot of the tariff conversation. Our economy was really, really unstable at the time, and so that's what the forecast came back for. We have to live by that forecast. Our job number one is to pass a balanced budget. We do that every time. We will always do that, at least as long as I'm around. And so that means we had to cut a lot of things, and so we cut that $100 million from public health a year down to $40 million a year, $80 million over a public biennium. And so, but one justification for that, I'm not going to say it was anyway, I'm not going to make anybody happy about this, but one justification is we looked around the state, and on average, the counties had only spent about 55% of that, and so they hadn't been fully utilizing it. So we thought, well, maybe that's the spot to cut. For instance, we didn't cut mental health at all. We kept it at $100 million for the biennium, and so so there's less money in public health this time. I think my hope is by 2027, when we craft another budget, that we'll be able to up that again.
The final question I just want to ask really quickly about Medicaid is Indiana has a law that is set to go into effect. It's a trigger law if the federal match rate changes. And I'm wondering what our state legislature plans to do when given the circumstances that we find ourselves in with the big beautiful bill passing, that the federal match rate is going to change, and how is that going to impact the Medicaid program in the state of Indiana?
It'll make it much, much more expensive. I don't know what we're going to do yet.
Just really quickly, of course, we have the Medicaid Advisory Committee that meets every year and submits proposals. This year, we're creating the new Beneficiary Advisory Council. I haven't seen any information about how many people have been appointed yet. I know one of them is going to be your direct appointee. I didn't know if you'd picked somebody yet.
I do have an appointee. I'll do that probably in the next couple of weeks, but I have not done it yet.
Okay. And I think that getting those beneficiaries as part of the process is going to be really crucial.
Chuck, are you looking for something to do?
I'm not currently a beneficiary.
Okay.
You can go. Just keep going.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to a question I have, which is a little more involving Monrovia schools. So I'll tell you a little bit about, we have a group that meets here. It's called Common People. Michael and I have this group, and we're just people who are like-minded who want to do good work in our community. We try to volunteer at the school. We have a lot of different outreach programs. We just started this about 3 or 4 months ago. So the Common People, one of the questions I asked you while you were here trying to have some coffee, but I asked you are going to be cut from the budget. And so, and you said that it actually increased by 2%.
2% each year, so 4%.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't get cut at all.
Okay, so from 2017 to 25, Monroe Gregg School District lost $2.98 million due to vouchers, money diverted to pay for the private choices of Hoosiers. If you factor in inflation during the same 8-year period, the school funding from the state has drained another $3 million from Monroe Gregg schools. If funding from the legislature had kept up with inflation during the same 8-year period and had not handed money to private schools, Monroe Gregg would have about $6.2 million to spend on students, teacher pay, and aides. For the Martinsville School District, those of you who are in Martinsville, the losses are of course even bigger. More than $9 million in 8 years to vouchers, and more than $19 million when you adjust for inflation. That's a lot of money lost to our public schools. Here in Monrovia, we are worried about the next 2 years. You and the Republican supermajority voted to fund the bucket of education another 2%, an amount less than inflation again. And you voted to expand vouchers again, so they now benefit some of the richest Hoosiers in the state, who would send their children to private school regardless, because they've got enough money to do so. But our kids who are in poverty, they have no help. So again, I ask, factoring both vouchers and the annual adjusted inflation between 3.5 to 4% this year, the bucket to fund Monroe Gregg schools will leak even faster. What will be the effect of this leaky bucket on our local public schools here in Monrovia, on our teachers, our programs, buildings, and foremost, our children?
So a couple of facts that you need to understand with regard to this conversation. So public funding of public education is extremely important to me. Since I've been pro tem, since 2019, 21, 23, we broke record investment as far as giving money to our public schools. Broke records. 2019, we added $763 million new dollars. We didn't fund it at $763 million. We added another $763 million.
How much was from
in
vouchers that was taken away?
2021? We added new money, another $1.1 billion to public education. And then in 2023, it was about $1.5 billion. All new money going to public education. And what we do in Indiana, we don't fund schools. We don't fund that school over there at all. We fund kids. If a child goes to that school, the money is going to follow that child and go to that school. If the child doesn't go to that school, we're not going to continue paying that school that dollar amount. We're going to send it to where that child goes. So if a child goes from there to Plainfield or there to Cloverdale, that $8,000 or so of money is going to go from Monrovia and go to Cloverdale. That's the reason that they're losing money. That is the only reason that they're losing money, is they have less students for whatever reason. I don't know the reason why that is, but that is the reason they have lost money. The only time, and since I've been pro tem, that we haven't broken a record in public education investment was in this 2025 budget that we just passed, because we had $2.4 billion we had to make up somewhere. So, and with regard to the private schools, that money is going to follow the child to a private school too. The philosophy there is, again, we fund children and their education. We do not fund schools. We're not investing in a school that's not educating children. I mean, if 100 kids left Mooresville and came to Monrovia, would you want all that money to stay in Mooresville, or would you want it to come here to help fund the kids and educate the kids that are now here in Monrovia? That only makes sense as far as
But most of this is going to private schools.
No, actually it's not. So
it is.
The question, the stat is this: there are 90% of our kids are in public. 89% of our kids are in public schools. They get 90% of the dollars.
And what's the percentage that makes over $200,000 a year that are taking that voucher money with them? Because not every kid costs the same amount, because some kids have more needs than others.
Those schools get more needs. If you have a child,
not if you're taking
a child that goes to Monrovia, and that child has certain qualifications. They're a foster child, for instance. Lots of sorts of things that statistically show that they might be harder to educate than other kids. They get more money. than my kid does. They get more money for that kid going to school than my kid got. So that's meant to try to offset that.
But that's not how that works.
I answered that question. The money, we're educating kids. We're not paying for schools. We're paying to educate kids. And so wherever that child goes is where that money is going to go.
How are we supposed to help failing schools where the people are sending their kids to better schools? How are we supposed to help those schools that are losing kids?
Well, you know what? Before we did this, there were a lot of failing schools. We just kept paying them. Right now, this is an incentive to make those schools better because they know if they get more kids and they're providing a better product, then kids are going to go there.
Oh my God.
All those kids have to take the I read and those exams. All of them do.
But the schools aren't really.
You know what? I'm not with you on that argument at all. I know a teacher from Monrovia too.
I know. So, I don't know where the microphone is. But, yeah, because they can't hear in the back. They really can't. It's hard.
So Julie Dimmick, English teacher at Monrovia High School and union vice president, so I have some numbers. So Monrovia has been very proud of being one of the only schools in the area that has increased in their student population until this past year when vouchers became nearly universal. So I know Morrisville has been growing, but Monrovia is the only one who's been growing in this, of their size in this area, outperforming Cloverdale and the Putnam schools and lots of other area schools.
It's a great school.
It is a great school. But this past year, we lost 2.4 students in population, and I don't think it's a coincidence. This was after the near universal voucher outreach. I know that there are programs at Monrovia, at Morrisville Christian School, where parents are taught how to get the money, the voucher money, and so even parents who were paying before are now. They're attracting students, and I know students from our school who have gone to those schools because now they have the voucher money, which I understand you're saying that the money follows the students, but we still have to pay the blind and low vision teacher to service those students at those other schools. We have to provide busing, and a new bus is like $180,000. We have to provide all of the special education needs. We have to pay tuition for Sanders, the alternative school, which none of those other schools have to. We are sinking in costs that those other schools do not have to pay. And I don't know what your perception is, but in my experience, about 75% of students are switching schools for athletics. It has very little to do with academics. I would say maybe 25%. So in this community, this school is the cornerstone of this entire community. And I assume it's the same in Martinsville. And we are being crushed by this voucher program. You could say that the money follows the student, but all of those services are still paid for by this school. So we are out the money that student is still needing from public schools, even though they're at Morrisville Christian. So and by the way, a school should not follow a business model. We are not attracting students. We have to serve everyone who comes through our doors. And saying that a school should follow a business model, make us competitive, that's losing for the students.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they need to follow a business model. I'm saying that though they need some incentive to provide a really good product. And you and I are just going to.
Oh my God, teachers in this state are amazing.
May I? Sorry, I stuck back in the corner. I just have a quick question for you on maybe a different experience, offer my experience. I went to a magnet school growing up, so I was bused from the east side of Indianapolis to the west side of Indianapolis. And I just wonder, answer sincerely, if it's no, I understand, but if you considered the community that you're taking away from kids when you offer them to go to a charter school, they're being taken away from their immediate community, because let's face it, a kid in the 5th grade only knows the kids on their street or 5 houses around them or whatnot. So growing up, I didn't have any friends in my neighborhood because I simply didn't know them because I didn't go to school with them. And this continued through middle school and through high school. I was bused to a different West Side school. So I lost my sense of community and wasn't able to just go outside and ride bikes with my friends or walk to my friends to stay the night because I didn't know any of those kids. So I just wonder if that was a consideration at all. I know the money's a big thing, I do, but I think we can all agree that we're lacking community. These kids are not connecting. I do, but I think we can all agree that we're lacking community. These kids are not connecting. People
Mother felt like that was the best choice.
So I was the kid that you guys are speaking about that was on Medicaid and who had all of those. I was that kid.
Okay.
And so not only did I have a hard upbringing, I also had a lack of community. So that's tough.
If you happen to go, and I'm not saying you did, but if you happen to go to a school that was absolutely failing, maybe 18% graduation rate, which happens in Indiana, in Indianapolis public school system. Is it fair to force you to go to that school if you don't have the money to move? Is it fair to force you to go to that school, or could you go to another school that's going to give you a better education?
I think that the argument is being made on your side of the aisle that we need to get back to community values and we need to respect the family values and that we need to encourage all of this. And I just think that you're missing that aspect, that taking kids out of their community and not allowing them to grow up with the kids that live next door to them. I think that it takes all kinds of kids to make the school, right? And I think that these parents who want the school to get better need to invest in a school, go to the school board meetings, do what they need to do to make that school better for that child.
So we should tell a parent that they can't change schools?
Yeah, like they used to.
If they want private school and they want to pay the money for private school on their own, they can knock themselves out just like it's always been. But like she said, those services still have to be provided in that building because there might be, let's face it, private schools can say that they're not going to accept a child on a voucher because they don't offer the kind of help that child may need if they're special needs or if they have any sort of struggles, and that school still has to provide that regardless if that child's there or not.
Charter schools have to take them there.
They do not.
Yes, they
Private schools do not have to take.
No, a charter school is not a private school.
Okay, so the school vouchers, where the school vouchers go, that can be a private school, right?
No, it is a private school. Those are. Yeah.
So they don't have to take all of the students.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you and I are just going to disagree on that.
We're going to disagree on everything you're
I
saying.
worry about the kids who don't have an advocate. There's always
You should.
There are kids that get left behind who don't have anyone to
Yeah,
look for that
you should worry about them. I do too.
What about those kids? I don't know what the answer is, but it doesn't seem like there's much in place to help those kids. That get left
I would love to help them.
Sorry.
I think that I kind of feel like some of the questions we're asking is for maybe we realize that government this is all a business. We realize
It should
that,
not
but
be a
we are
business.
also dealing with humanity, and so I am asking, in some ways, what are we going to do to bridge a gap?
Senator Bray, Senate
Why
District
aren't we
36.
trying to do more of that instead of saying I don't know? I would do that.
If you have questions, I can ask them for you.
When we're writing bills and doing things, why aren't we trying to bridge a gap to create less of the deficiencies that we have?
Well, so you're asking why aren't we making better schools?
No.
I'm
What do you ask?
I'm asking.
Indiana's frankly, guys, a pretty darn healthy state.
No, it is not. You are high.
Least healthy state.
Quality of life is low. Education is low. Health is low. Maternal mortality is high.
Well, I meant a different kind of healthy. I mean, we are doing.
Well, then what kind of healthy do you mean? What kind of healthy do you mean?
Education.
Because you're worried about having a surplus of money and telling us, go screw yourselves, your schools are just going to fail. Get better schools. Our teachers are fucking amazing. Our principals, our admin, everyone are amazing.
I agree.
Then stop defunding them.
So listen to this. You know what the NAEP score is? National Education Score. They do that every 2 years, and they take about 7,000 students in Indiana, and they test them, 4th grade and 8th grade, to see how they compare to other states. It's the only analysis that we can make between Indiana and the 49 other states that we have. This last year, the NAEP scores came in, like 4th grade reading went from 18th in the nation to 6th in the nation. That's a great story. We're doing really well. Education is doing really well. Teachers are rocking it. I am indebted to them because they're doing a fantastic job. You may not like the structure we have in place. That's fine. We can disagree with that. I'm really comfortable with that. But the fact that we're educating kids in an effective way is really, really important, and we're really doing it. In fact, so they test 4th grade, 8th grade in math and reading, and we are in the top 10 in every one of those. Every one of them. I call that good.
In the country?
It's so good. Why did you change the diploma
It is
program?
not. We are not in the
And
top
why
10.
did you take money out of the schools? You're saying they're good. Why did you change it?
Okay, we're going to agree to disagree. We didn't take money out.
No, we
of
don't
schools.
have to agree
continue
to
add
disagree.
money to schools. You don't like that it went to vouchers or charter schools, which is fine, but we still added money to our education system. I understand that you don't like that.
It's not about liking it or not.
I guess that's what we're asking. That's what that is definitely what I'm asking. I'm asking, like you're saying, well, you don't like that. These are children's lives.
Yeah.
They're being affected. So
And
yeah,
we're
don't
doing
like it.
really well.
Whose parents
Top
pay
10
your
in the
salary?
nation. We're doing really well.
We're not doing well when we're talking about Monrovia still has to take care of all of the special needs and all of the extra things that a child would need over at Mooresville Christian School. Monrovia is still paying for all of those services that Mooresville Christian can offer. But the voucher is going with that child,
Here's
right?
something else that's relevant. So when that money transfers to Monrovia Christian Academy, 90% of that transfers to Mooresville Christian Academy, 10% stays here. I'm not saying that totally offsets it, but that is true.
One more thing about the funding.
I know that there have been some increases in educational funding, but if we go back to Mitch Daniels and those years that I know at Monrovia, and you guys probably know your own school stories, we had, pay freezes for several years. And I would say that even with these increases, I don't know if in real dollars we would be on the scale of how much teachers should be paid. So maybe it's increased in recent years, but there was such a deficit for so many years that there's a lot to catch up on.
So just real quick, Julie, that was $300 million that got cut 2008 or 2009. Must have been 2009 because that was a budget year. And it was because, the economy crashed in 2008, so there just wasn't money there. That was $300 million. Again, I'm going to give you these statistics. In 2019, we added $763 million new dollars to our education system. Not Monrovia, but to our education system as a whole. And 90% of that goes to traditional public schools, even though they have 89% of the kids. So $763 million in 2019. 2021, $1.1 billion new dollars. And then $1.5 billion new dollars in 2023. We have more than made up for that 300. I'm not saying that maybe you couldn't do some more with some money. Obviously, everybody wants more, but it is a finite resource, and we have to distribute it as best we can.
And I do understand that in the complexity factors, sometimes in Monrovia, we get less money than
Because
pursuing.
you don't have as challenging a case sometimes.
So the complexity factor does change a lot from year to year
It does.
as well.
It does.
And it is always hard to hit a moving target.
Yes, it is.
So, and sometimes I know that teachers feel that's by design and not maybe for the greater good. And I know that you probably feel otherwise, but there is just a lot of frustration from teachers, from parents. So it's frustrating. And I appreciate your answers.
Sure, I get it.
But
Thank you.
yeah.
So we're hearing rumors about Camp Atterbury being used for concentration camps. Is that happening?
I haven't heard a rumor about that. I honestly don't know what the status is of that. I don't have any idea.
Well, you're very much against immigrants. So
no, that's
you
not
are.
what I said earlier.
Your emails really look like it.
Okay.
So you have no clue
No,
what's happening.
I truly do not.
Switch subjects a little bit here. One of my pet items is while you've been our representative, legislation has been passed restricting private citizens from being able to get fair compensation for the excess energy generated from solar panels. And that legislation has stifled the installation of solar panels by private citizens throughout our state, significantly reducing the amount of clean solar energy that we can generate statewide and use to offset the use of coal, natural gas, and now nuclear energy. And without that solar power, without the solar power we could be generating with private solar panels, the demand for power would be lower, and power costs for all of our citizens would not be increasing so often and so much. Will you commit to revisiting and restoring a fair net metering system for both private property owners, including businesses who install solar panels, so that we can all benefit from the clean power that our private citizens can generate?
Well, Stan, I'm happy to talk to you about that because you know much more about it than I. What I have generally said as far as this position goes is I would be, so we had a net metering program. We still have a net metering program.
It's garbage.
For years it was when you had put a solar panels on your house and you generated more power than you used, you could sell it back to the grid at a retail price. And we switched that now, so you can still do it. You sell it back to the grid now at a wholesale price, so it's not nearly as much money. I don't know exactly what the numbers are. I'm afraid I just don't have that in my head. But there's a cost to that, and one house, another house is not an efficient way to do it. You would get me to be supportive of commercial property and industrial property. I'd be all on board on that because I think you could do it at a scale that made a lot of sense. If you come up with a way that makes sense to me in a retail property, then I would entertain that again.
Residential.
Well, I would suggest that you look throughout the other states that are encouraging this and building solar panels all over their homes and so forth, and actually generating excess power and reducing the amount of power that needs to be generated by the power companies and so forth, because we're on the bottom list. I mean, we've got a great installation there at the airport, you know, that's huge and that's generating power. There's no reason why we couldn't be encouraging community or companies to put solar panels on the tops of these big boxes all over that are coming up all over our state and generating power. But they don't do that because they can't get paid by the power company a reasonable price for that power. There's no return.
Fair point. Thanks.
So it's not, adding that little power on every home, every other home in this community would be huge. And the economic return, it's a free market system, and right now we've got an
They're not going to do that. They just
system
that
set
reactor
up
thing.
to the benefit of the power companies and to our detriment. So,
Thanks, Dan.
We're trying to do away with gas furnaces and go electric, heat pumps, things like that. So we're going to be, and then you've got these IT centers, so the electric load is going to increase. So this only makes sense to add solar.
Well, I don't know that that's possible now because didn't it just pass that we're all going to be paying for small nuclear reactors?
Yeah, we are investing in those.
No, we are.
We are. Yeah,
we are.
I'm a ratepayer too.
Yeah, kind of.
and our rates are going to go up because we have to pay for the proper management. And
He pays taxes on our tax dollars. Yeah, we give him. And then writes it off, I bet.
Guys, I got 30 more minutes for you.
So since data centers came up, wish I'd written my question down. Outside of prosecutor, do you support the ability of our local and state officials to sign non-disclosures and hide from their citizens who elected them and pay them the information they have that's going to greatly impact them, i.e. a data center?
I think everybody can hear me without a microphone. I'm on the Monrovia Town Council here. This data center issue that has been coming up, Terry asked me to go ahead and say something about it. I was one of the people that signed a non-disclosure on it. And the reason I did this, I was president of the town council at the time I did. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to see what they were up to. I wanted to see what kind of things that they could offer the town. Because if they became part of the town, they can go ahead and start funding a lot of the infrastructure that was here. That's the reason. The only discussions I had with them for the 2 times that I was there was about the wastewater treatment plant, and that's all that was talked about. Nothing was promised. They said they didn't tell me who they were representing whatsoever, and that's what and that's the reason I had gone ahead and signed it, because I wanted to find out what it was about. I figured it's.
So my question is, Mr. Bray, do you support our elected officials signing non-disclosures?
So if you're going to recruit business, and let's say it's a business that you want, my understanding is that it's not particularly popular here, right? But let's say there's a business that you want. They will not come unless they have some...
So corporations take precedent over citizens?
Yes.
No, not the entire time, but initially to start a conversation, they're going to require that or they're not going to come. So yeah, we need more transparency in there, but I do support non-disclosures for a while so you can at least start the conversation.
So again,
they're absolutely necessary.
corporations take precedent over
Always.
citizens?
Those are your words, Janice. not
And they
mine.
pay
So they
less
don't?
taxes.
I've answered your question as best I can.
I know data centers was going to be one of the designated topics. So does someone want to?
I wanted to ask you about this. Do you know if we are getting a data center? If it is going to come or not?
We're getting a lot.
I think that it is.
Okay.
Where's the lawsuit at? We haven't
I have no idea.
We haven't gotten any of the public records requested. They've hired lawyers.
Who's they?
It's been requested that the county present public records to us of what went on. Haven't gotten those. A lawsuit's been filed. They're using our tax dollars to fight us, questioning what the heck is going on, and we're getting nothing out of it. And they're saying, well, we got to hide behind our non-disclosure. Is there a limit to how long a non-disclosure lasts? I mean, if you're saying they have to have it for a corporation to come, is that a 6 month? We get to talk to you for 6 months?
At this point, it depends on the agreement. I mean, you probably need to look at that and make sure that we can build in as much transparency as possible.
Why is it so cheap?
Well, a corporation, when they begin to shop for a site, they don't want competitors or people to know that where they're shopping around. So that's a big part of it. They just won't come if they don't have that confidentiality, at least to start.
Isn't the competition just like schools? They can compete against each other?
Sure.
Okay, so we don't need confidentiality. I mean, the schools can compete, but mega corporations can't compete against each other.
They do every day. If you want them to come here, they're going to at least initially have to have some.
They are going to come here because this is a beautiful state with inexpensive property. They will come.
Cheap tax.
If you would sell.
The state has encouraged it. Aren't there encouragement from
tips
the governor down?
and abatements.
Abatements.
Yep.
Well,
tax.
those are local. The only thing that the state would give, as far as an incentive to a data center, is for the sales tax on buying the equipment, I believe.
Don't we pay for
Also
don't our tax dollars pay for
utility costs
redevelopment?
as well. Sales tax on the utility costs that are spent by these things. So that's a
And that's not a
significant
small
amount.
number. Yeah, that's not a small
And
number.
these are some of the largest corporations that have ever existed in human history.
And that's how they stay large.
And so I just want to, while we're on this topic, I think healthcare is one of the most, being in it and seeing it, like doctors are extremely burnt out with the amount of work that they do. And they've sort of, I think, a bit unwisely bought into this idea that AI is going to make our jobs easier. And just to draw the connection here between the SMRs that were talked about earlier, the data centers that are being built in Keller Hill Heights, and the AI hype and boom that we're seeing that's driving this desire to build data centers. I submitted a resolution to the American Medical Association in May that was adopted, and they're going to study, which means they're going to do a lit review on studies that have already been done. But the health impacts of data centers are significant, and I just want to talk a little bit about that because the community that you're sitting here in front of is faced with a data center being built just up the road, and we don't have to talk about the people that are going to lose their equity on their homes that they've, invested in, and now their home prices are going to decline, which is another significant issue about this. Or the fact that the utility companies are going to shift this cost onto us, the ratepayers, to build out the infrastructure costs of the unproven SMRs that have not been built in this country. We're just sort of expecting them to solve this energy demand problem for us. So energy costs going up, water scarcity going up, that drives two public health concerns called energy insecurity. When people live at the level of energy insecurity, they're less likely to purchase their groceries, they're less likely to purchase their medicines because they're faced with electricity shutoffs every month. So that's another public health problem that we're about to face here in the state of Indiana. And also the noise and air pollution that these things generate. We're seeing reports from around the country, and I was at the zoning board meeting where the lawyer was saying 65 decibels, 65 decibels. All the homes are going to have, right. So what 65 decibels is about like a lawnmower running outside your home 24/7.
Like this generator over here?
Exactly like that generator. And we as human beings are not creatures that are designed to live with that 24/7. Thousands of years ago, when we were hunter-gatherer societies, we didn't have that going on. And that noise pollution, this is a settled issue in medicine. That noise pollution, chronic levels above 45 decibels, increases your likelihood of cardiovascular disease because it's causing this sort of chronic stress response in people, whether they're aware of it or not. And that is why our NICUs are soundproofed to 40 decibels. So if anybody in here has had a kid that has been in a NICU, it was soundproofed because of this reason. And we're expecting all these people to have to live with 25 decibels above that. And we're just being told that this is a benefit for our state because AI is going to take everybody's job. So I just would like to hear your response to any of that.
Well, I'm not sure that argument makes any sense that AI is going to take everybody's job. I mean, that's not really correlated with whether a data center runs here or not. I think, first of all, it's a local decision, not my decision, and I'll rely on the locals to justify and articulate why they give approval to it.
But the energy.
Well, you guys had some public meetings.
We had one public meeting, and then when they went to the commissioners' meeting, they had a drawing that showed the trees, and they wiped out all the buildings to try to fool us.
And they told me I was just finding my information online somewhere, not from.
It was not.
From meta-analyses of noise pollution. I mean, this is like legitimate research that I'm talking about here. But you did have a role in the energy and the desire to promote SMRs in the state of Indiana and the tax abatements on the sales taxes that we're giving to these companies. Those were things that you did have a role in.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
And that is enabling the data centers to be built. So it's not just a local thing. It's a state of Indiana thing.
That's fine. Yeah. We need to make sure when it comes to data centers, they're not really good job producers.
Nope.
There's obviously some property tax benefits, huge property tax benefits, and I think Morgan County stands to benefit. But I don't really know the details of that agreement or the arrangement.
Well, you should because it affects your.
It's a public health issue.
Okay. So, but the thing that we do need to watch out, there is a heavy water use there. We don't really have a serious water challenge in Indiana. We do have a water challenge. It certainly is something that we can accommodate by moving water around, making sure that we don't. In fact, we're in the process of doing a statewide study all over the state of Indiana to figure out where the water is, how much is there, what's the 50-year forecast of how much that region is going to try to develop economically so that we're not taking more water than need to out of somewhere so that you choke off their economic potential. So water's the thing, but it's not the biggest thing. Power is the biggest thing. And those data centers, we need to make sure that we aren't starving power from everybody else or putting excessive costs on everybody else. In fact, I've had a recent conversation.
I shouldn't have to pay anything to build a business that's going to make money off of me when they sell that product back to me.
Okay.
I'd like to disagree with you on the concept of water. I've been working nationally and internationally on water issues intended to the International Rain or Water Alliance of the United Nations a couple of years ago. So Indiana is uniquely blessed that they don't see any urgency with water, although you start going west of the Mississippi, you start seeing problems with water.
Quickly, yeah.
Absolutely. But you do see issues. I was told that there's a town up in south of Fort Wayne, the southern Indiana town, where the municipal water is suspect. Martinsville had problems facing.
Not with supply of water, with a horrible contamination problem.
To your point, yes. Up at Lilly, Eli Lilly up in Lebanon. Water's an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lafayette has an issue.
Down in Owen County, there are folks that have to go out and bring their water back to their house. So yeah, it's around.
I've been working with alternative water systems, Bray water recycling, rainwater, things like that. Is Indiana looking for alternative water sources, like rainwater catchment, Bray water recycling, which we did a job for Purdue University, where Bray water recycling reduced domestic water 40%. So it's a real number that you can, if you've got the right situation, you can save water. Is there anybody at your level that is concerned about water issues in Indiana before they become an emergency here in Indiana?
Yeah, like I said, we're working on that study right now, so we have the entire state map to know what the water supply is, what their usage is right now, what their usage might be over the next 50 years. So we're trying to get that finished up. It's going to be a few more years before we get it finalized, but because it takes a while and it's expensive.
Is there an opportunity to this? Running pipeline is tremendously expensive.
Well, even the study is expensive to figure out where that water is and how much is there.
If there's an opportunity to sit on there and contribute what I've been involved with,
all right,
hang on, baby.
I have one more question about the non-compete. You said, well, you had public hearings. We had one public hearing here at the church, and the only reason anybody knew about it is because I called the TV station. And then the second one was where they voted on it. The decision was made. They did not take any input. They did not listen to anything we said. They wouldn't let us have a speaker. They let their attorney, an economic development guy, do all the talking. We were allowed 2 minutes, and then they laughed at us. And then someone said, well, if you're putting it in Monrovia, are we at least going to see if there are any benefits, any financial benefits for this area? And we were told no, that money is for the county and we'll use it wherever we want to. Do not expect any of that money to return to this area. So they're decimating our community without our input and telling us to eat it. And it's all because of the non-compete. So I can't believe you, or non-disclosure.
They wouldn't even let your attorney speak.
No, they wouldn't even let our attorney speak. So it was not a fair fight.
Their attorney wouldn't turn around and even look at us.
They were insulting, disgraceful to us. They treated us horrible. Their decision was made and they didn't want to hear from us. Period. And it hurts me very much to hear you say, but that's not my problem as your senator. Well, then who are we supposed to turn to when we need help?
You're not going to get anywhere with these guys.
Yes, I am.
And didn't they just pass a bill saying that the energy companies can charge in advance of them? So they can start billing us, correct? For projects that they're going to do before they even start?
And then charge us to have them afterwards.
Yeah, so who's paying for that? Me. And it's the corporation that had the non-disclosure that's benefiting. Then they're going to sell that product back to me. I'm paying them to build it, and then I'm paying you to buy it.
Yep.
I want to say a word about decimating communities. My name is Carly Sotelo, and I
work in refugee resettlement. I work with immigrants every single day. I teach English full-time as a second language to adults. And the refugee resettlement program has been completely decimated due to racism and a complete lack of knowledge about what refugees are and what asylum seekers are in our state. So I want to know, what is your opinion about people who are on a special immigrant visa who have fought alongside our troops in Iraq during the Iraq War and have been promised refugee status to come here and contribute their expertise in engineering, biomedical chemistry, all of these subjects that we have people come and study and contribute to our nation, who have served along our troops and betrayed their own nation, put their lives in danger.
And now I have a woman in my English class who is not going to see her husband ever again. His flight was scheduled a day before, January 20th, and they canceled his flight. He was promised to come here with his family. Do you agree with separating families who have done everything legally, who have been promised and sold a lie by the U.S. government to come here and start their lives when they gave up everything overseas for our troops?
Yeah, I think we need them here.
Thank you.
Well, why aren't you fighting for them then?
That's when we go back and ask you, does due process exist?
No.
I have people in my class whose parents have been deported, who came here legally, who had a legal status, and Trump decided to revoke their temporary status, so suddenly they're illegal, they haven't done it the right way, then I sweep them off the street and deports them. Children. I have children in my class whose parents have been deported, who came here legally. What do you have to say about that, and what are you doing about it? Because I'm sick of the lies, and I'm sick of you decimating the very people that I love and work with every single day who contribute everything to our country. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm very angry, I'm very frustrated, and I'm heartbroken, to be honest, because the racism and the disgust that I have seen ever since January 20th, the families that have been ripped apart in my office every single day, it's unacceptable. They come here to work and live and provide for their family just like everybody else, and they've had it a million times harder than any of you in this room. So I beg you to do your part, do your research, know what an asylum seeker is, know what a refugee is, and help people.
He won't. He will absolutely not be helping anything.
You can look right in these cameras and denounce Trump's policies right now. You can just stand up and be a man.
You're hurting real people.
But you're hurting us too, because those immigrants help feed us. They stock our shelves, they feed us our food, they pick our food, they slaughter our food. You're hurting our farmers.
Yeah, that's a real issue. Amen on that. Yeah.
I'm going to close this, and I am so thankful that you have taken the time to do this.
Me too.
Yes.
Thank you.
One of the only ones who have.
I have a concern about when we were talking about water, and how much water that, how much water that the data center may or may not use. And we don't know the answer to that, right? You said we don't know the answer to that.
That's correct.
We have a study going on.
It's heavy use, though. It's a lot of use.
And we have a study that's going on, and it's going to take some time, right? 2 years, you said? I think it was?
Well, not for the specific for this data center. I'm talking about statewide to figure out where our water is, how much we're using right now, and how much the community will need over the next 50 years, so that we're not moving water from one spot to the next and detriment to some community.
Okay, I understand that. But my question is, why are we approving data centers before we know how it's going to affect the very community that we live in, that I work in, that I serve all these people in, that I truly love? Why are we putting the cart before the horse? We don't know the answer to these. Why are we not doing
Morgan County has done their own study of water.
Yeah.
That study is done.
They have.
The study is done?
Yes.
Okay, then noise. What about the noise?
I wasn't in those meetings. I don't know. I mean, somebody mentioned the decibels. I can't disagree with that because I don't know.
What we're asking you is to be accountable, Mr. Bray.
I try to be accountable every day.
That's what we're asking you, to be accountable for the people that you are working for, the people in these communities. Our teachers are burnt. Our residents are burnt out because
Yes, I
we
will.
have all these things
No
coming.
worries.
We have
You're
no
okay.
say for it.
That's
This
true.
is our community.
Tell you what, I bet he'll never come back to Monrovia.
He won't. And most of them haven't even done this. He's one of like maybe 2 or 3 who've done town halls in the whole state.
I made it
Yeah, I know.
grades in
Yeah,
school
I
as
guarantee
he
you.
did. I know he did. I know a bunch of people here that have
It's
made
over
better
there.
grades probably than you did.
Probably.
I am not a
The bed
stupid
would go-
person. I work in the medical field
They've
30
got
years
to do
and I
that thing,
see
and
No,
what's
it's-
going to
Look
happen
at
with these
Yep.
Medicaid patients
Yep.
and these nursing homes.
It's
I
going to
know
be a
what's
rough
gonna
couple of
happen.
years.
You don't know what's
be-
going to happen because you never work in a nursing home.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they're
if
gonna
we can
do
get
it.
to the elections
But
next
if
year,
you
we
would
might be able
let
to
us
turn
have
some of it around.
referendums, let us make some of the choices.
Same.
I don't
Same.
like that one party and one system gets to make all the choices. Put it up to a vote.
What are you afraid of?
Well, so you're not going to get me to be supportive of referendums at all. Here's a couple reasons. One is that I'm an elected official. You hold me accountable. I'm not doing the job, then get rid of me, right? I mean, I'm totally comfortable with that. I'm sure you have. You probably all have, and I am comfortable with that.
Oh, that was funny.
I do cherish your candor. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Well, that's you're absolutely entitled to that.
On a lighter note, since we're going to close, we'd earn some money if everybody would quit going out of state to buy marijuana.
Yeah, you know what though, Janice? I mean, I don't disagree that you're true, but we're not gonna pass marijuana for revenue. That would never be the reason we'll do it.
Okay,
okay, pass it for medical reasons.
Guys, I want to thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Really productive conversation. Sometimes hard, but that's how this works, right?
I did. Exodus Refugees. So there's a website. They need donations, and I have it on there.
Okay.
Will you meet with us again?
Sure.
After the Medicaid study commission and to provide us with further updates?
Sure, I'm happy to meet again.
All right. And then my
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, of course I know. I mean, these are how I craft my ideas or my philosophy, right? So we're not going to agree on everything.
We won't agree on anything.
I've learned a ton from Stan over the last couple of years. Yeah. So